Hey there, it's time once again for another episode of Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at 10 common Magic the Gathering cards, tell you if they're any good in the Pauper format or not. It's episode 202, and let's see what our first card of the day is. It's Goblin Assailant. I feel like we did this or something. Yeah, we did this. We did this before, because I talked about how rare it was for a while for red to have a grizzly bear. Cool that red gets a grizzly bear. I mean, it's not exciting, I guess, but it is cool. Usually you'd see red cards get a downside for this, but we've done this before. I think the art's pretty good, but it's a red grizzly bear. It doesn't really show up in Pauper. It's vanilla, so it's not good. But as a grizzly bear, it gets a 2. That's what a grizzly bear gets. A red grizzly bear, I guess that's a little bit more interesting than a green grizzly bear. I'll still give it a 2. I don't think it's good enough to get a 2.1, but we won't count that one. Reclaiming Vines is our actual first card of the day. It's 2 and double green for a sorcery. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. Okay. We've seen a couple of different colors get land destruction. Black did some land destruction at one point with like cards like Sinkhole and other stuff like that. Red is obviously the bigger land destruction color, and it sees a lot. White had like Armageddon, but that's all lands. That's not quite the same thing. And then green has been able to destroy lands a little bit. It's not core to green's thing, but they do it every once in a while. This is an interesting spell. Sorcery speed. It hits lots of different things. Obviously, you're going to be able to hit a land pretty much the entire game. Because if your opponent's not playing lands, well, something kind of went wrong for him, maybe. But destroying an artifact or enchantment, those are always nice things, having that kind of naturalized effect. I don't like it at sorcery speed, though. Naturalize is a 2-mana instant speed that can hit any artifact or enchantment. I understand that they don't want land destruction to be instant speed, but this feels really bad to me. It feels really slow. If you're using this on an artifact or enchantment, you feel terrible because you could have just played Naturalize and had it for a lot cheaper and at a better speed. So you kind of want to hit the land with this to really feel like you're getting your money's worth. But even then, it feels like you're potentially overpaying because Stone Rain costs 3. What are you doing? What are you doing paying 4 mana to destroy a land? What are you doing? I mean, yeah, you have the flexibility of hitting any of these things, but I think you'll just kind of feel bad no matter what you do. It's okay. It's nice to have that amount of versatility on a card. It's just a little expensive and it's a little slow, and those are kind of death knells in a format that just needs to be a whole lot faster than that. I'll give this a 2.5 because it does hit a lot of stuff, but I don't want to give it more than that. Next is Caught in the Brights, 2 and a white for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and when a vehicle you control attacks, exile enchanted creature. That is some great flavor. Not a particularly great card, but it is some great flavor. This is a pacifism effect, and you get pacifism, but you're paying an extra mana for pacifism. That's not going to be good. But when a vehicle you control attacks, you exile the enchanted creature. So you do get rid of the creature at some point, and that would mean this would go into the graveyard. Maybe you have some kind of enchantment in the graveyard. Synergy, maybe. It feels like a lot of extra effort just to be able to exile the creature. I think I'd just rather play pacifism at this point. And also, not that there are no vehicles in the Pauper format that get use, but there's not a ton. So, I mean, I'm actually struggling to even think of one. I was like, oh, the Pinnacle Kill Ship, but that's a station. That's like a spacecraft. That's not a vehicle. It doesn't count the same. So, I mean, I know that there are Pauper legal vehicles, and some of them occasionally get some use, but this is so narrow for that extra gravy on it. And if you're not using the extra gravy, you should just be playing pacifism. And you shouldn't be playing pacifism because you should be playing like a billion other cards that are better than that. You should be playing Journey to Nowheres or something. So I can in good conscience give this a good score. I think I have to go into the ones, in fact, because this is, when you're worse than pacifism, that is That is pretty bad. That is pretty bad. I'm going to give this a 1.4. I really do not like this card. Probably even deserves lower, honestly. Trip Up is 3 and a blue for an instant. Target non-land permanent's owner puts it on the top on their choice of the top or bottom of their library, and it has cycling for 2. So you kind of get a bit of a time ebb, an instant speed time ebb. That's cool. And I do target non-land permanent's owner puts on, so it's their choice. You don't get to choose. So they still get to pick whether it's a time ebb or whether they kind of just lose the creature forever by permanent. Sorry, it's not just a creature. It's better than a creature. It can be any permanent, non-land permanent anyway. So they get to choose whether they want to time ebb themselves and lose a bunch of tempo, or if they want to just lose the whole thing completely and put it at the bottom of their library and maybe never see it again for the rest of the match. That I don't mind. Those are good things. 4 mana is a little expensive for that, but it's not terrible, especially at instant speed. I kind of like that. And then it's got cycling for 2, and two cycling is solid. That's okay. I'd prefer a 1 mana cycler, but this does pretty darn well, and it's available in every format except for the penny dreadful format. I don't understand why anybody would pay more than a penny for this card. Is that like a Tix thing for? I don't play MTGO, so that's which is not very good for somebody who does Pauper content, I suppose, to not play MTGO. But I think that's like an MTGO special thing where it's only 1 penny of ticks to be able to work out. So weird that this one doesn't seem like it's all that incredible to matter, but that we're the Pauper format, we're not the penny format. So I think Trip Up is fine. It's not very good. I wouldn't play it. I don't think you should play it either, but it's a fine card. Probably was pretty fun and limited. I'll go for like a 2.8. Wild Dogs. We just did Wild Dogs, and I talked about how much I liked the art, but didn't like the card. But it does have cycling on it. Anyway, we'll skip this one because we just did it, and we'll move on to Hammerheim Deadeye. 3 and a red for a 3/3 giant warrior with Echo. 5 and a red, which means at the beginning of your upkeep, if this came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, you sacrifice it unless you pay its Echo cost. We'll talk about that in a second. But when this creature enters, you destroy target creature with flying. I like these. This was originally from Planar Chaos, but I think Magic has done some interesting things with creatures that have Echo, or you'd see something in Lorwyn, a creature had like Evoke, which is kind of like a reverse Echo in a way. The idea for Echo, it sounds a little complicated when you just read the Oracle text here. The idea is, it makes a whole lot of sense just by hearing the word Echo. You pay this guy's mana cost, which is 3 and a red. He comes down, he has an enters the battlefield trigger, and when he enters, you destroy target creature with flying. Great. And you get a 3/3 body there for that turn. And when it comes to your next turn, at your next turn's upkeep, you have to choose, do you want to now spend 5 in a red, its Echo cost, if you want the creature to stay on the board, or you can not pay its Echo cost, and you have to sacrifice that creature, so then it goes to your graveyard. That's interesting. That's interesting to me. I think that's a cool idea to get this temporary effect. It almost makes it a modal creature. Not quite, but the idea that I can spend 4 mana and just have this be a 3/3 body to block for a single turn, or it makes a really good chump blocker if you know you're not going to pay the Echo cost the next turn anyway. So sure, I'll just chump block with this. That's great. But even if you just treat it as a spell that's, hey, 4 mana, destroy target creature with flying, not an amazing rate for that, but still, that could be something that you do. And then the next turn comes around and you decide, nah, I won't pay the Echo cost. I'll just let it get sacrificed. So it does give you a spell in that way. And in the Pauper format, that can kind of matter when you're playing really creature heavy decks, and you can play cards like Winding Way and Lead the Stampede, and those will help you find creature cards. And maybe you want these kinds of effects to be on creatures and not be on spells. It could, like, there's like a card Broken Wings that would also destroy a target creature with flying, but that's like an instant or a sorcery. I think it's an instant. So the idea is like I can't find that from Winding Way. I could find this guy from Winding Way. So maybe I do want to play more creatures with these kinds of effects. And then we talk about cards with Evoke from like the elementals from Lorwyn, and the idea there is your evoke cost is generally cheaper than the regular mana cost of the creature, so you can pay it for the evoke cost, and it's like again you just paid for the spell version because evoke says you have to sacrifice it as soon as it enters the battlefield. So you get the trigger for it, it feels like a spell, and then you sacrifice the creature. Echo works in a lot of the same way, and I think the reason people don't like Echo is two reasons. One, the Echo costs generally feel like they are too high, in my opinion, because I've already spent 4 mana putting this guy on the board, and now you want me to spend 6 more mana to keep this guy on the board? No, thank you. That sounds gross. For a Muldrifter, though, I can choose to pay 3 mana and get the divination effect, and like okay, I feel pretty good about that. Or I can pay 5 and I still get the divination effect and I keep the creature forever. That feels a little bit more fair, or it feels a little bit more like a good value, because it really sucks to go like I already paid for this creature. I paid 4 whole mana for this creature, and now another turn comes around and you're telling me I have to pay more mana for this creature. That sucks. So that's like a feel bad where evoke doesn't feel bad, and it is interesting the way that some of these abilities can work, where it's just like a little tweak from a design perspective and a player's whole perspective on a spell completely turns on a dime. That's really interesting. We've also found some interesting design space by both with Evoke and Echo, honestly, about creatures that leave the battlefield. So the idea, if you think about something, this is a rare card, but you think about Revelark. Revelark. Nope, that's not how you spell it. What if I just say Lark? Yeah, there you go. Revelark. It's an E, I see. Revelark says when it leaves the battlefield, you get a thing. So its evoke cost is really high, and its evoke cost is higher than its normal cost. But the idea here is if you wanted to evoke this, you generally would like to evoke this because then you'd get its ability sooner because it sacrifices itself if you just evoke it. So then you'd actually get the spell. If you're playing this as a regular creature, he costs cheaper. He's 5, and it's not bad. You get a 5 mana 4/3 flyer. Okay. But if you really want its effect, you need this guy to die. So maybe your opponent won't block it and you don't get to get the effect out of it. So you now have to build your deck in a way that you could sacrifice this guy, or you just wait to get the extra mana and you play its evoke cost for that. And they've been able to do similar things with echo costs where it doesn't feel so bad. There's a goblin out there that when it comes into play or leaves the battlefield, or maybe it says when it dies. But when either of those things happen, you get to make a 1/1 red goblin token. So the idea is, hey, yes, it has its echo cost. If I don't pay the echo cost, I'll at least get the goblin for coming in and the goblin for dying. Or I can pay the echo cost, leave this guy in, and then when he dies, I'll get another goblin at some point. But at the very least, I'm always getting 2 goblins out of the deal. That's a lot of information about general cards and not about Hammerheim Deadeye. I just thought it was interesting to talk about. Hammerheim Deadeye is not very good. It is in some ways a better Hill Giant because it is a 4 mana 3/3. That's just Hill Giant stats. And you get this extra ability when it comes into play. That's great. That's better than a Hill Giant. But the echo cost, meaning that you'd then have to pay another 6. Do you want to pay 10 whole mana to keep this 3/3 on the board? I don't think you really do. So it's kind of up to you of whether paying this 4 mana to get this guy for a turn. He doesn't even have haste, so he's not even going to attack. It is just like a 3/3 blocker that also takes out one of an opponent's flying creatures when it comes into play. You kind of got to tell yourself what you want to do with that one. Um, there's also a question on Echo of like what happens when you will like reanimate. I think I struggle a little bit with this. At the beginning of your upkeep, if this came under control since the beginning of your last upkeep. So yeah, so if you would still have to pay its echo cost at some point, even if you just reanimated it, because it still came into your control since the beginning of your last upkeep. So you need to make that decision. No rules text underneath that, but anyway, this is not a very good card. I'm not out here trying to say this is a good card. In fact, I'm trying to say this is a bad card. But I do think there is interesting design space and design discussions to be had around something like Echo and Evoke and how we feel about those things. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below for sure. But until then, I think I'm going to give this guy a pretty disappointing 2.4. He's not very good despite all that talk. Oh boy. What is our next card? Did that click not work? It doesn't seem like it did. Okay. Streambed Aquatex is 1 in double blue for a 2/3 Merfolk Scout. You can tap it, and target Merfolk gets +1/+1 and gains Island Walk until end of turn. Or you can tap target land to or tap and target land becomes an island until the end of turn. Kind of cute. So if you have multiple of these guys out, you can do both. You can make your opponent's land an island, and you can give one of your guys island walk, one of your merfolk island walk, and they can swing in unimpeded with a little power and toughness boost. Do I really want to tap 2 of my 2/3s to make one other creature get +1/+1 and not be able to be blocked? I don't know. That might not be a very good deal, but if you have another way of getting one of these two things, whether you have like a spreading seas or something, spreading seas, I believe is uncommon at the very least. Spreading seas. Oh no, spreading seas is common. Yeah, in fact, I think we've done spreading seas. I was thinking about this Wilds of Eldraine one that Enchanting Tales, which I have a copy of this. And it's uncommon, so I guess I was thinking about that. Anyway, a 3 mana 2/3 doesn't feel very good. Both of these things are pretty darn conditional. I need to build my deck in an extremely specific way. I don't love it. I really don't. I think it's very slow. It's very clunky. And you probably have to build your deck in such a way that it makes your deck a whole lot worse, and all of that feels kind of bad. So I think it's better to just kind of avoid it completely and give this something like a 2.2. Maybe not even that, but Nazumi Informant is 1 and a black for a 1/1 rat rogue, and when this creature enters, each opponent discards a card. It's a little better in Commander than something like the Virus Beetle that only just has a single opponent discard a card. This one makes all opponents discard a card. So Commander, they like this card. In Pauper, we have so many of these things. Corrupt Court Official. I forgot what the actual rat is called, like the original rat that does this. It's not Ravenous Rats. I don't think. Is it actually Ravenous Rats? It is. It is Ravenous Rats. Okay. So we have a number of these, both rat and non-rat. And the Virus Beetle, like I mentioned, that's an artifact creature that does a similar thing. So having a creature that's an artifact is generally better for you, because if you're playing the discard idea, you're probably wanting to play Refurbish Familiar as well, which has affinity for artifacts. So having another creature that you can play earlier that has affinity for artifacts makes a lot of sense for that, or that is an artifact to count towards your affinity for artifacts, is probably just better. This is a rogue, though. That could be useful to you. It's not just a rat, but the rat could also be a decent creature type, depending on what you're playing. This is an okay card, but we just have so many, and most of them are just a little bit better than this in the Pauper format, at least. Again, Commander, this is probably a little bit better. You get more value out of it by everyone, all of your opponents discarding cards. But for the Pauper format, we don't really care about that, and we just have slightly better ones. So I'll go for, a solid like 3.2. Still a good card, just not as good as some of the other options. Into Thin Air is 5 and a blue for an instant with affinity for artifacts. Hey, we were just talking about that. You return target artifact to its owner's hand from Fifth Dawn and only Fifth Dawn. This probably was meant more as something that would bounce your opponent's artifacts to their hand, because then they'd have to spend a lot more mana to put those things back on the table. It'd be a tempo loss. But I suppose being at instant speed and having affinity for artifacts, if you have a bunch of artifacts on the table, which you do if you want to pay this, if you want to pay a cheaper cost for this, maybe your opponent is trying to blow up one of your guys, your Mirror Enforcer or something. And you go, okay, well, I'll just into Thin Air and I'll bounce it back to my hand, and then I can play it again because it still has affinity for artifacts, and then I'll be okay. Maybe you can use it offensively or defensively. And in Fifth Dawn Limited or Mirrodin Block Limited, sure, that probably was something you could do, and it was still a useful piece offensively because that was such an artifact heavy block that, yeah, you could probably use that against an opponent. I suppose you could use it against opponents in the Pauper format. There are a lot of artifact based decks. Not all of them are, though. So are you going to risk putting this in your main board of like your affinity list, because that's really the only place it's going to go with the cost that it has and requiring affinity for artifacts? You're going to want to play an artifact based list. Do you put this card in? Probably don't, right? Like, yeah, it can bounce your own stuff, but outside of like a refurbished familiar, what are you bouncing that has an ETB in a affinity list? Not a whole lot. Mirror Enforcer doesn't care about entering the battlefield. Your Pact Altair does, but Pact Altair is not really an affinity creature. Utrom Monitor doesn't care about entering the battlefield for anything like that. So you are really just using it for protection in that sense. And then, what are you really bouncing on your opponent's side? You don't want to bounce their Grim Bauble or their Tithing Blade or some things like that. You could bounce a clue token, I suppose, and then that's just gone forever. That's some value, but are you really spending a card to get rid of their token? Maybe not. You could potentially bounce a land. That's something. You could really force some tempo if they're, a Jund Wildfire deck and you're bouncing one of their bridges back to their hand. Sure. That's a pretty big tempo loss. That's not bad. But it's tough. It's tough. I don't think this quite makes the cut. I think you'd probably just rather play spells that will just exile artifacts. We have plenty of those, and if you're in Affinity, you have access to red. That deck plays some red, so you can play your Cast into the Fires and things like that. So I don't think this is very good overall, even if it is a relatively versatile spell that at the time was probably pretty darn good in Fifth Dawn. So we'll go for I'll still give it a 3. Affinity for artifacts is a very strong thing. 5 artifacts on the table, and this is kind of just an unsummon, but for artifacts, that's okay. Although we kind of have other cards that do similar things to this as well. Anyway, I'm going to stick with my score of what, 3.2. I think I just said 3, and we'll leave it at that. A couple more cards here. Practice Tactics is a single white mana for an instant. Choose target attacking or blocking creature. Practice Tactics deals damage to that creature equal to twice the number of creatures in your party. It was so close. It was so close. A party consists of up to 1 each of a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard. So this can potentially do up to 8 damage by doubling if you have everybody in the party. Now, as they're saying 1 each, that means you can't have a changeling, have just a single changeling go, oh, I've got everything in the party, because it's all the creature types. You need 4 creatures, and each one of them has to be at least one of these creature types, these job classes, to get the full amount on this. And you're really not going to play this now because we have a bunch of other cards that you'd probably play instead. You got the Thraben Charm, which deals damage equal to twice the number of creatures you control. You don't have to worry about the party stuff. So that's already kind of the same thing. Yeah, you're paying a little bit more, but you also get these other modes of destroying an enchantment or exiling a graveyard. Or, you might be playing Ultimate Alliance, which is a new card from Marvel, which says it deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature. Yeah, it's not double, but also if you have 8 creatures, then it's doing as much max damage as Practice Tactics could. So Practice Tactics is okay, but you do have to build your deck in a very specific way. You might not necessarily have a deck that wants to play both white and has clerics, rogues, warriors, and wizards at any given time. So it is pretty narrow in that way. It can be okay. It can be a real star if you're hitting it just right, but it does take a little effort to get there. And it's not effort you really have to expend when you have so many other cards that do a similar thing or honestly a better thing than what this card can do. I'll go for a 2.9. It still is a halfway decent removal spell. Although it does say target attacking or blocking, and that is just kind of White's thing. And that sucks. Like Thraben Charm doesn't need that. It can hit anybody no matter what. I'm gonna drop this down. I did kind of miss the attacking or blocking thing. That is a lot more narrow than even what it was before. Let's jump it all the way down to I guess a 2.5. This is actually kind of a bad card. Next is Grisly Transformation, our final official card of the day. It's 2 and a black for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. When this aura enters, you draw a card. An enchanted creature has Intimidate, which means it can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or creatures that share a color with it. We've talked about this before. This evolved from Fear, and Fear only worked for black creatures or artifact creatures could block a thing. And then they kind of got away from Fear a little bit, turned it into Intimidate. Some other colors could get used to it. Green got a lot of use out of that. Red, I think, got a little bit of Intimidate. Probably not too much of the other 2 colors. I don't think white and blue got much Intimidate, but this is a card that can go on any creature. Even though this is a black enchantment, a black aura, you can put it on a white creature, and that white creature gets Intimidate, which means even though this is a black card, the creature has the Intimidate, which means it would be can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or white creatures in that instance. So that's kind of cool. We do have, if you just want to put this on a black creature, you could just play Fear. Fear is a card you could play. Now is Fear in Pauper? I don't remember. Also, where the hell's Fear? Lots of things saying Fear. Oh, right here. It's right in front of my face. So you could just play Fear for a mana cheaper. It does take 2 black pips. But hey, maybe in like a mono black devotion deck, you don't mind having a couple pips. You probably don't want to put it on a creature that then could get taken out, and then you lose a lot of your black pips before you get to put down your Gary. But in the meantime, I don't know. It's probably pretty good. Fear is still pretty solid, even if it's been turned down just a little bit. We used to have artifact creatures used to not be able to be other colors. They would only be colorless. That's the whole thing with artifacts. They could only be colorless. And then in when was it? It wasn't Mirrodin, because then that was when you had artifacts that then at least had color abilities on them. And maybe that even was a little bit before too. But you had a lot of color abilities on colorless artifacts in Mirrodin block. And so at some point we started to get artifacts that could be colors on their own. And think of like Hunter's Bow or something. That's like an Assassin's Creed card, but it's like a green bow, or the Bow of Nylea, I suppose, is an enchantment artifact. Yeah, it is an enchantment artifact. Anyway, so we've gotten a little bit. These have become a little bit worse. Intimidate and Fear have become worse because now you can have a bunch of artifacts that, even if they are colorless, or even if they are different colors now, it's just more things that can block these creatures than they were able to before. Grisly Transformation is fine. I don't think Intimidate's all that good of an ability. I think we have enough creatures and creatures of different colors and those artifacts that I mentioned that can have colors as well, that it probably doesn't give you as much evasion as you'd like it to have. But I guess, I mean, creatures with devoid, a writhing chrysalis can't block one of your guys at all. So that's something, I guess. I guess. I don't know. I'm gonna go for a 2.7. Yeah. This costs a little bit more than I would want to cast for an enchantment like this. And yeah, if I'm already playing black, I probably still just want to play fear instead. And that just ends up being a cheaper thing overall. Let's get ourselves a quick bonus card and call it a day. We'll end with Mortal's Ardor. It's a single white mana for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains lifelink until end of turn. That is a normal magic card, a normal little combat trick, but I like it. Single mana for +1/+1 and lifelink? Yeah, okay. Black kind of gets this better, I would say. There are black cards that I believe give like +1/+0 indestructible in lifelink or death touch in lifelink, and that's gonna generally be kind of better. But the toughness can be useful as well in a white deck. This is probably just a little bit too normal, a little bit too fair, and it doesn't see play. But I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad. I think you could play this pretty effectively and end up having a decent time with it. In fact, I was just making like a little Jeskai deck, like a casual Jeskai deck, and maybe this would be a pretty good thing to put in there as just a combat trick to make all the prowess guys get bigger, but then have one get lifelink too. That's not bad. Maybe I'll just kind of write this down as a thing. Mortal's Ardor. Interesting. I mean, it's definitely cheap enough. I don't mind paying 15 cents for a halfway decent magic card. Yeah, but not really for the Pauper format. Let's go for a 3.4. That's a pretty good score for what that is. But yeah, 3.4. That's it for today. We'll catch you on the next one. Till then, bye.